If you're buying anything today, you've seen it. I mean, it's everywhere.
Oh, absolutely.
You're scrolling online, you're in a store, and every big company is suddenly green, sustainable, or carbon neutral.
Consumers are demanding it, and corporations are, well, they're eager to supply the image of it at least.
But behind all that marketing, there's this murkier reality, right? This thing called corporate greenwashing.
That's right. And today we're doing a deep dive into the legal and the commercial fallout of this exact practice.
And our insights for this are coming from a really interesting source.
They are. We're basing this entirely on a compelling analysis from an Australian lawyer, Adrienne. She attended a major legal seminar with partners from all the big Korean and international law firms.
The international part of that seems really key. The source mentioned that because Korean companies are going global so fast, the seminar itself was, what, half in English?
Exactly. And a lot of the lawyers there were certified in both Korea and the U.S. This isn't just about local reputation anymore.
So the old ways of doing things, the sort of domestic comfort zone, that's just evaporating.
It is. What might have been fine in one country can now trigger a massive lawsuit in another. We really need to understand what greenwashing is, what the new legal standard is, and why, believe it or not, the real solution might be artificial intelligence.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly are companies getting away with when they go green?
So we have to start with a clear definition. Greenwashing is it's basically advertising or PR that's designed to make a company seem environmentally conscious.
So an illusion.
Precisely. An illusion where their actual efforts to protect the environment are minimal or, sometimes completely non-existent.
So this isn't an honest mistake. It's a deliberate strategy of acting eco-friendly, even if your whole business model is.
Well, no, not.
That's the critical distinction. And the tactics can be really subtle. You'll see lots of green on the packaging, or they'll use these vague, reassuring words.
Like eco or sustainable. Exactly. Or just phrases like thinking of the planet. It's all deliberately ambiguous, so you feel better about the purchase, but the company doesn't have to make any claims they can actually prove.
And you're just bombarded with this stuff. For the average person, how are you supposed to tell what's real and what's just a slick PR campaign? You can't really.
You can't. And that difficulty is exactly why regulators are finally starting to step in. We're seeing this tightening grip on misleading terms.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. The source points out that even on those big online shopping sites, there's been an official crackdown on using generic phrases. You can't just call something an eco-friendly tumbler anymore without backing it up.
So they're moving past the obvious lies and going after the vague, unsubstantiated stuff now.
That's the shift, and that shift brings us straight to the legal risk.
Right. So is all this public concern actually leading to lawsuits around the world?
In a lot of places, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Overseas, you see environmental lawsuits from consumer groups all the time.
Yeah.
And they're getting more aggressive. But the interesting thing is the Korean context. The public interest in climate issues is incredibly high, but actual greenwashing lawsuits are very rare.
How rare?
According to the analysis, 0 have been filed so far.
0? That's genuinely surprising. I mean, given the media coverage and awareness, why is there such a disconnect?
The experts at the seminar pointed to a couple of things. First, the legal concept of greenwashing itself is still a bit unfamiliar to the general public there.
Okay, that makes sense.
And second, there's a deep cultural insight here, something related to the Korean sentiment of jong.
Jong. Can you elaborate on what that means in this kind of corporate context?
Sure. For anyone who isn't familiar with the term, jong is. Well, it's a complex idea, but here it implies a sort of deep collective loyalty or shared feeling.
So a kind of cultural tolerance.
In a way, yes. It could lead to a bit more leniency toward familiar entities like big domestic companies. Minor missteps might be seen as acceptable, or at least not something you'd immediately sue over.
A cultural shield. But it sounds like that shield is getting pretty thin.
That's the forecast. What's fascinating here is the prediction is that this tolerance is ending. With globalization and international pressure, it has to.
So the first big Korean greenwashing lawsuit is coming.
It's likely imminent. And when it comes, domestic allowances won't matter. The standard will be global.
Okay, so to understand that global standard, let's talk about the case study the source used, the lawsuit against Delta Airlines.
Right. This is a huge one. Delta went big. They advertised themselves as the world's first carbon-neutral airline.
That is an incredibly bold claim. How does an airline even become carbon neutral? They're still burning massive amounts of jet fuel.
They try to do it with something called carbon offset projects. So for listeners who might not know, a carbon offset is basically paying to reduce emissions somewhere else to, in theory, cancel out the emissions you're creating.
Like funding a project to plant trees or build a wind farm.
Exactly. Investing in renewable energy, capturing methane, things like that.
So the legal fight isn't about whether Delta paid for the offsets.
No.
It's about whether those offsets actually worked. If they genuinely balanced out the carbon footprint of flying jets all over the planet.
That's it, precisely. The lawsuit is challenging the effectiveness, the permanence, and the provability of those projects. Can Delta provide independent scientific proof that planting some trees actually mitigates global warming to the extent they claim?
That is an incredibly high bar. It changes everything.
It does. It shifts the legal burden from just, spending money on green things to proving you achieved a measurable scientific outcome.
Which means if your marketing team makes a claim that your legal team can't prove in court, you are in serious trouble. That has to force a major pivot inside these companies.
It does. And this is why the analysis says corporate survival is no longer about better marketing. That's a path to failure. It's about genuine systemic transformation.
And in the technology driving that transformation is AI.
It's artificial intelligence.
Okay, so that's the pivot. We're moving from the problem, the deception of greenwashing, to the solution. Adopting AI for real sustainability. Where is that change needed most urgently?
The analysis points very clearly to the logistics industry. That's the first place. Automation and AI are desperately needed there.
And we're already seeing this with companies like Coupang, right?
Yeah.
Using robots in their warehouses.
Exactly. Using robotics to manage everything, moving away from such a heavy reliance on human labor.
But this brings up a really important tension, one the source acknowledges. It calls this the painful situation of job loss from all this automation.
And we can't ignore that. It's a huge ethical question. But from the pure perspective of corporate survival and hitting those environmental targets, there's a clear dual impact.
Okay, what's that?
Well, the first is obvious, increased efficiency. But the big environmental win is the massive reduction in carbon emissions from employees no longer commuting to work every day.
Ah, so the indirect emissions, the Scope 3 emissions.
Right. A highly automated, centralized system shrinks that indirect carbon footprint dramatically.
That's a painful calculation, isn't it? Trading emissions from human commutes for the efficiency of automation. But does it have to be all or nothing? Couldn't AI just be used for smarter routing to reduce carbon without replacing the entire workforce?
That's a critical question. But the analysis seems to lean toward profound automation for maximum effect. The competitive pressure is just that intense.
So if your competitor cuts their carbon footprint by half with automation,
and you only manage a 10% gain with some optimization software, you're going to lose. You'll lose market share, your corporate value will fall. The pressure from global litigation, like in the Delta case, demands the kind of certainty only deep automation can provide.
Understood. The market is pushing for the most radical solution. So beyond logistics, where else should companies be using AI to get real results?
They have to put it to work in deep research and development, not just optimizing old processes, but inventing entirely new things.
Okay, what's the first area for that?
Developing materials that have inherently low carbon emissions. I mean, think about replacing traditional plastic or concrete with something that's actually scalable and low carbon. That is a massive challenge.
And AI helps how?
It can model and test millions of material compositions in a fraction of the time it would take a human team. It can find pathways that we might not discover for decades.
So you're attacking the problem at the source, at the very material level. What's the second area?
Creating easily biodegradable, eco-friendly packaging. We need packaging that doesn't just have ego written on it, but that actually breaks down quickly and safely.
Right, not in 500 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
AI can design custom polymers that degrade under specific conditions. It's moving from just marketing a green product to manufacturing a genuinely transient one.
Okay, and the third area, managing the waste we already have.
Advancing recycling technology, especially for really tough things, like lithium-ion batteries.
Which are crucial for the energy transition.
Crucial, but the materials are finite and so hard to recover. AI can make the sorting, the disassembly, the chemical separation, all of it more efficient and economically viable, so those materials go back into the supply chain, not a landfill.
So AI becomes this core engine for invention, driving down the environmental cost of a product from start to finish. A huge strategic shift.
And it's a shift that can't happen in a vacuum. The analysis really stresses that the government has to actively support companies that are making this genuine transition. Fines for greenwashing aren't enough. You need incentives for real change.
Which leads to a policy idea, what was suggested in the source.
The suggestion was for an AI eco-certified enterprise policy, a special government certification.
Not for just saying you're green.
No, for proving that you've actively implemented AI across your operations and that it is delivering measurable eco-friendly results.
That would be so much more valuable than some internal green label. It would verify that you are technologically committed to this. What would that certification look for?
It would have to be based on outputs, not inputs. Not how much you spent on AI, but a verified percentage drop in logistics emissions, or a measurable increase in your packaging's biodegradability that you discovered through AI.
Okay. That really frames the final competitive battleground. It sounds like companies aren't just fighting each other anymore.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you're right, the dynamic is shifting fast. The analysis says corporations won't just be fighting competing companies anymore. They will be fighting to survive against AI.
Fighting against AI, meaning if you don't integrate the tech that delivers that verifiable efficiency and sustainability, you just become obsolete compared to a company that does.
Exactly. Adopting AI isn't a choice anymore. It's a condition for survival in a world that's defined by climate sensitivity and global legal scrutiny.
And the consequence is clear.
The slower a company is to adopt AI, the faster its corporate value will drop. Greenwashing might buy you a month of good PR, but it cannot stand up to global lawsuits or the relentless march of technology.
That's a powerful and frankly challenging picture. We've laid out how greenwashing is this massive legal risk, perfectly shown by the Delta case, where proving your claims is the new battleground. And the only real way forward is fundamental AI-driven change in logistics and R&D everywhere.
And understanding this whole structure, the legal risk, the AI imperative, the need for policy, it equips you, the listener, to critically look at every corporate claim you see from now on. You know the playbook for deception, and you know the playbook for genuine change.
And we keep coming back to that tension, the one from the logistics section. We've seen that AI automation can slash carbon emissions and boost efficiency, things essential for survival. But the source is clear that this comes at the cost of job displacement. So it raises this final important question for you to think about. As companies are forced toward these AI-driven green goals, how should society and governments manage the very real human cost that comes with all of this necessary efficiency?